Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am thrilled to be here today with Dr. John Gottman. John, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So for those of you who haven't heard of Dr. Gottman, he and his wife, Julie Gottman, have been working with couples and people in relationships. I'll give a further bio, but for 40-something years, is it?
47 years now.
47 years now. So I will say in my personal life and in my work coaching clients, I often turn to your work and your research, and so grateful for everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So we are going to have a conversation about the 8 essential conversations for lasting love. And this is a new book that John and Julie wrote with Doug Abrams and Rachel Abrams as well. It's called 8 Dates. And we'll get into that a little bit in a moment. But I will say this is the manual that I think every couple should be handed either before they choose to get married or, to get them into the first year and longer in their relationship. So, you've created something really powerful here. So let me introduce you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll introduce you and then we'll dive in. So Dr. John Gottman is world renowned for his work on marital stability and divorce prediction. He's conducted 40 years of breakthrough research with thousands of couples, and his work on marriage and parenting has earned him numerous awards. Dr. Gottman was one of the top 10 most influential therapists of the past quarter century by the Psychotherapy Networker. He's the author and co-author of over 200 published academic articles, more than 40 books, including the best-selling The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, What Makes Love Last, The Relationship Cure, Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child, among many others. And you've been in the media, Good Morning America, Today, CBS, Oprah, New York Times. I mean, you've been everywhere. And
it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And you're the co-founder of the Love Lab, where all of this research on couples and interaction has been conducted. And maybe you could just give a little, for those who haven't heard of the Love Lab, because the research and the testing that you've done is so intricate. I think people would really appreciate knowing what goes on there as a background for our conversation.
I'd be happy to. So, I started this work in 1972. I collaborated with my best friend, Bob Levinson, who was also best man at my wedding with Julie.
Oh, nice.
And Bob and I, our relationships weren't going very well with women. We went from one disaster to another. So 2 really basically clueless guys decided to do research on relationships. And we built a lab where couples would talk to each other about how their day went after they've been apart for 8 hours. And we would collect physiological measures while they interacted.
Yeah, that's the part that amazes me.
Yeah, we were looking at how fast people's blood was flowing at their respiration, how much they were sweating from the palms of their hands, and uh, and it was synchronized to the video time code, so we could actually look at specific moments when people really went into fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
in their conversations with one another. People were just sitting down in this laboratory, and yet we got heart rates that were 170 beats a minute.
Wow.
So, when people get flooded like that, physiologically flooded, then they really don't function very well. They can't take in information very well. They think that if they say their point of view at a higher decibel volume, they'll be more
Right.
persuasive.
Somehow they'll be heard better.
Right.
Yeah.
So they really can't think very well and function very well when they're physiologically aroused. That's one of the things that we discovered that was kind of startling, because it turned out that we could predict the future of a relationship with very high accuracy.
Wait, didn't you
And
say
most people,
94% accuracy?
that's our best, but over 7 studies, we've averaged over 90%.
Wow.
So there's about 10% of the variation we can't account for, but we keep doing more and more research on. Well, emotion plays a really big role in understanding how couples interact and kind of how they build safety with one another,
Mm-hmm.
and create intimacy as they're talking to one another.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing that you've tracked, like you said, the physiological data and, figured out, I mean, in some of the books I've read, the pieces around the 4 henchmen and what breaks up a relationship, the criticism, contempt, stonewalling, defensiveness, all of this that you found is not just based on, not that it would even be less powerful, but that it's not even just based on therapeutic work, but the physiological data to back it up. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I've kept track of my own ability to predict things, and I discovered that I'm wrong 60% of the time. So if I didn't collect the data, I might think I was right 100% of the time, but I'm mostly wrong. So it's really the data speaking to us, and that was true of this book as well.
Yeah.
We had 300 couples go out on these 8 dates. So I got to listen to, they recorded their dates, and I got to listen to 2,400 dates.
Wow.
Which
you actually
is really interesting.
Dates. So, okay, I want to give a background too for these 8 dates, right, are essential conversations for a lifetime of love. And so I just want to read the 8 different topics, and then I want to hear a little bit about how you chose the topics. So number 1 is trust and commitment. Number 2 is addressing conflict. Number 3, sex and intimacy. Number 4, work and money. Number 5, family. Number 6, fun and adventure. Number 7, growth and spirituality. And number 8, dreams. So, these are topics, I would say, having worked with people for, not as long as you have, but over a decade, that these are topics, relationship topics that are incredibly important. And so, right, how did you pick these 8 conversations?
Well, we really picked them based on what we know the concerns of our couples are. So we studied, thousands of couples over the years, and, done therapy with, hundreds of couples as well. And we know that the first concern that couples have is, can I trust you? Can I be safe with you? Can I rely on you? Are you going to be committed to this relationship? And when things get hard, will you leave? Or will you stay and work on things? So trust and commitment being the first date was almost a no-brainer. And, and it's something that we've heard from couples for decades now, and it hasn't changed. So, we start this date by asking people to say, well, what was it like in your families growing up? I mean, how did your parents show one another that they were trustworthy, or failed to do that? And what about commitment? How did they show one another they committed or failed to do that? And what do you want it to be like here in this relationship? What's important to you? And
it seems so basic, like every couple would have that conversation, and yet we don't.
Right. There was this interesting study done in Los Angeles by the Sloan Center at UCLA, where they studied 30 dual career couples in Los Angeles, and they put cameras and microphones in the couples' homes.
Mm-hmm.
And, and these couples basically were ignoring the relationship, ignoring one another. Mostly their lives had devolved into this long to-do list. Yeah. And they spent an average of 35 minutes a week talking to each other. That's all.
A week?
Yeah.
Wow.
And most of the conversations were about who's going to do what when.
Uh-huh.
So forget about fun and adventure and playfulness and romance. It was just, all their time was occupied by either work or children.
Wow. Okay. And so I want to take a moment to go back, because one of the parts of the book before you got to the 8 dates was the 4 skills of intimate conversations. And so, hearing about the fact that these couples are talking 35 minutes a week and not even, they aren't using any of the skills that you talk about
right.
the skills of having an intimate conversation.
Exactly.
So how do you help couples? Yeah, unless you want to go somewhere else. How do you help couples have these intimate conversations?
Well, it isn't really very complicated, but, among adults today, people are getting less and less experience really interacting and exploring emotions with the people they love. Yeah. So we're sending them brief messages in texts, or emails.
Yes.
And, we all know that text and emails are really bad channels for communicating emotion. Mm-hmm. We need to look into people's eyes and see their face and touch them. And so probably, the worst dates that, I discovered on YouTube are the ones where people are broadcasting. They're talking about themselves throughout the whole date rather than asking questions. So the beginning skill, surprisingly, is to be able to know what you're feeling and put it into words. So you can't stay invisible in a date, but then you really need to ask questions, open-ended questions, to explore your partner's emotions, the person you're out with, and really get to know them very well. And, skills 2 and 3 are really about asking questions and exploring these emotions. And the 4th skill is about empathy, really validating it. Understanding is a very important part of emotional connection.
Yeah. I think that one, especially when I think about, they're all important. When I think about learning empathy and having empathy, it seems like it's hardest to have empathy for a romantic partner, right? Because I could have empathy for a friend and know, I don't have to deal with that part of that person in my everyday life, or it's not going to impact my income or any of that. So is there any specific way you help couples find or, express that empathy or feel safer to be empathic in that way?
Yeah, I think it's very important for people to really tune into their partner's pain when their partner is unhappy. And, we think of getting intimate connection through doing fun things and joyful things. But the moments when our partner is actually disappointed in us or angry or upset, or we've hurt our partner's feelings inadvertently, those are the moments that really have the greatest potential for emotional connection.
Yes.
And I know for me, personally, as a guy, the 4 most terrifying words that I don't want to hear from my wife is, "We need to talk."
Uh-huh.
But I've learned over the years, I carry a little notebook in my back pocket. And when she says that, the first thing I need to do is deal with my own defensiveness. I need to go, okay, it's important for me to listen, and I kind of take a couple of deep breaths, and then I say, okay, I'm listening, talk to me, I'm taking notes.
I love what you said too.
That's hard.
Yeah, it's hard to get over your own defensiveness.
Right. Yeah. And, and that's the work in relationships, is to really be able to take in information. And part of what we've done in the 8 Days book is to kind of enliven curiosity, make curiosity come alive in a relationship, and, keep it alive, because we're always changing as we get older. Yeah. And to stay in touch with that, to stay in touch with what our partner is thinking and feeling, it's a very important thing. and it's very rare.
Yeah. When I used to lead more workshops with couples, we would talk about how, if you think you actually know your partner, that's in a way the death of the relationship, right? If you're not getting curious and thinking, oh, I'm going to learn something new about my partner today until the day you die, then you've kind of boxed your partner into this, small, limited view.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I think we're not attracted to our clone. We're attracted to people who are really very different from us.
Yeah.
And those differences can keep the relationship alive.
Yeah.
And the worst thing we can do is try to turn our partner into us, which is really what spells death in a relationship. When we criticize our partner for not being like we are. And that's where all the dysfunction comes from.
Yeah. Do you have a personal way? This might be getting a little more personal. You can say if you want to go here, but I'm just wondering if there is a personal way that you've used to let go of some of that defensiveness or trying to prove yourself or, be right, even though Julie's saying something about you she doesn't like or she's not enjoying.
Yeah. For me, I'll tell you, Shauna, it's always been a struggle. And it doesn't actually get much easier over time. Because my first reaction when she says we need to talk and, I can see on her face and I hear that voice that I've done something wrong or I've hurt her or disappointed her or she's angry about something. My first thought is, oh no, I wasn't planning on doing this tonight, and I didn't want to spend my evening this way. But what helps me a lot is writing. So I write down what she's saying. And my first thought is, why does she have to be so negative?
Do you write it down as she's saying it?
I write down the words she's saying.
Okay.
So I slow her down so I can get it all down. And as she's talking, I start thinking, well, that's a good point. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, oh yeah, sure, yeah. And so the writing helps me calm down. And that's my really overwhelming technique for really paying attention. One time, she talked for 2.5 hours.
Really?
And I got 18 pages of notes.
Wow.
It was actually kind of fun because it wasn't that she was upset with me. We had a couple of hours in a hotel room. We were doing something, speaking in, the next day, and we had some time. And I said, we got some time. So, what's on your mind? And she said, I'll tell you, but only if you stay quiet and take notes.
Wow.
Okay, I will. And I've saved that. It's 18 single-spaced pages of notes that I took. And it was fascinating. Stuff I never knew about her after 30 years of being married.
Wow. Well, I would imagine.
So I really like it a lot.
Yeah. And it sounds like, well, this is my imagining is that, as you're listening, once you get beyond the defensiveness, there are things where it's like, oh, you said, oh, that's a good point, or oh, sure, I do that, or that you can learn things.
Right. We have a videotape of a couple talking to one another, and this guy is a lawyer, and he's a litigator. He's a courtroom lawyer, and he is helping his wife identify what about his personality pisses her off the most.
Oh, yeah.
He's helping her do that. And he's saying, well, is it the way I say things? She says, yeah, it is. He said, well, what about the way I say things? Is it that I'm really definite? Or, yeah, it's that you're so definite. And, well, am I authoritarian? Yeah, you are. You're authoritarian. Yeah, he says, I guess I can be. Kind of works in the courtroom. She said, doesn't work at home. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, that's interesting.
Well, I like the idea, right? Interviewing your partner about what really pisses you off about me and recognizing that it's not entirely personal, right? It's not entirely that these things, it's not that, you're wrong or bad for doing these things, but there's another person over there who it can be like oil and water or something doesn't work for them, but then you don't have to go making yourself wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So if you can do that, if you can conquer your own defensiveness, then, and get in touch with your curiosity about how your partner thinks and feels and what your partner needs, then, you really understand how to make the relationship better moment to moment when you connect. And that's what these dates are designed to do.
Yeah. Do you have one of the 8 dates that's your favorite or that you think is, really important for some reason?
Well, my favorite date is the one about work and money. It's really interesting because, people do fight a lot about money, but, it's not logical to fight about money, right? Because money is about arithmetic. And yet what people really fight about, I've discovered, is what money means. And I analyzed 900 arguments about money that were in my lab. And I realized that what people were disagreeing about was not so much how much should they make, how much should they save, but what's the meaning of money to each person. And often people even have like a family history with money. There was this one couple I worked with, for example, in therapy, where they had met in college and they were each the first in their family to go to college. And they both had fathers that were dreamers, but very unsuccessful financially. So they had this legacy of financial ruin in their families. And when I was working with this couple, the wife had this idea to make a family crest. And they designed a family crest that represented their values about money and success. And they wound up putting it, in their living room, actually creating this wooden family crest that had symbols that really were important to them. So they created like a new history for their family about money and meaning, and they ask themselves questions like, well, how much money is enough money?
Right.
And
that's
what
a
do we
huge
want
question.
to do with this? Yeah, huge question, right? And, some people get into this cycle where they just think you can't have enough. And so they spend all their energy just making money and never thinking about how they want to live their life.
Yes. I
So
love
that's
that.
my favorite date.
Yeah. And looking through the book, I mean, you have 30 or so sentences around, for me, having enough money means, right? Whether it's having power, being independent, being strong, and asking people to really take a look at the underlying meaning that they're bringing to the table.
Yeah. The other date that I think is really a lot of fun is the one about sex and intimacy. And, it's so interesting because when people think about sex and problems that couples have about sex, they always think that, it's some, they have to go see a sex therapist and it's some sexual technique that they have to learn. But, the biggest study done on what makes couples have a great sex life was recently done involving 70,000 people in 24 countries.
Wow.
And just ask this question about what's different about people who have a great sex life and people who don't. And the surprising thing is there's about a dozen things that people do who have a great sex life. Like they say, I love you every day and mean it. They give each other compliments. They cuddle. They spend time cuddling. Even if they're watching television, they stay physically in touch.
Wow.
They give each other, surprise or romantic gifts. Then they have a weekly date. That's a big part of it. So they're not things that involve so much the physical part of sex as the romantic part of sex, the emotional part of connecting.
Well, it's funny when I work with people or when I work with couples, I often say, I do a lot of work around sex, but it has nothing to do with the physical act or the positions. It's all the emotional, intimate conversation, all of that. And I love too in your book where you wrote the top sex and passion killers in a relationship are vital to do things left undone, emotional distance, lack of safety, emotional or physical, exhaustion and stress, feeling unappreciated, and a lack of physical affection or, flirting and connection apart from sex. So, I think that you've been showing again and again, it's not like you said, oh, we need to go learn some new hot sexual position or something.
Exactly.
All the other pieces that keep us connected as a couple.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's so interesting. So the dates are really designed to each be kind of like a seed that we plant that can lead to more and more curiosity and more conversations, things that couples can build on over time.
Yeah. One of the dates that I find most profound is the growth and spirituality, and
Mm-hmm.
growth in particular. I mean, because I was reading too that you said religion is actually, how did you say it? It's less common of a something that creates disconnection than a lot of
Mm-hmm.
other things. But growth, I mean, I tend to see everybody grows, of course, but in relationships where couples feel less safe, or they need
Mm-hmm.
to have that stable ground, I think people can grow less because it's scary for your partner to grow.
That's right.
So I'm wondering, how do you help make it safe, or how do you support people to not be threatened by their partner's growth?
Yeah, I think that one part of the challenge is to really try to understand how your partner is different from you, not just how your partner is similar to you. You probably have similar values, and grow to have similar values over time. Particularly if you have children and you think about what values you want them to have. But my wife is very different from me. We're both Jewish, but for her, I mean, she spent 2 years in a Buddhist monastery after college. And part of her going to Mount Everest Base Camp was about really understanding Nepal and Buddhism in Nepal. And also, she had these values about nature that I just didn't grow up with. I grew up in New York City. So for me, nature was taking a subway to Central Park and having a picnic. And then wiping off nature before you got into the door. So my mother didn't get upset that you were, making the house
tracking mud into the house.
Right. But I learned from Julie, how to really appreciate nature. And we love kayaking together. We went to the Galapagos and saw all the wildlife, and, we kayaked together on the ocean. So, our differences wind up really stretching me. And she's been very involved in Native American religion and ritual. And that's been something that, has really enhanced my life as well. So understanding the differences and learning from them is a way of, making everything safe, not judging your partner's values, not judging what your partner finds sacred.
Right. And I guess that comes after, right? That's farther down the line than the conversation about trust and commitment. So if you actually get that your partner is committed to you and you trust your partner, I would imagine there's less fear of, well, you're going to grow and then you're going to leave me.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. So that safety is there. But also, in understanding growth, what is it that people consider sacred? And, it can really be ethical values. It doesn't have to be religious. It can be spiritual in the sense that there's something you treasure and really find extremely special. It energizes you, that you believe is important, like helping the planet survive, for example. A lot of young people really see that as an important aspect of the sacred today. Yeah, it's a very cool date.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm also imagining that a couple gets stronger when they do have, or when they share. It doesn't have to be the same thing, but if there's a passion for how can we outward facing support the planet or a certain cause, I would think that would build an even stronger foundation.
Right. And even if you don't agree, even if you don't have the same source of energy and spirituality as your partner, really understanding that and treasuring it, even if it's not yours, and really enhance the relationship.
Yeah, that's what I've heard you say again and again, right? That you're really honoring the differences between you and Julie. There's not a sense of, well, my way is right and her way is wrong. There seems how do we take care of each other? How do I let my wife go to the Mount Everest base camp, even though I'm afraid she's going to die, right? And I would rather her not go, but how do I have to honor her that this is, this is
Yeah,
a need or a desire. And if I stifle that, I'm not supporting her to grow, or I'm not supporting her to be who she is.
right. Exactly. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, I have a picture of her at 18,600 feet, and I've never seen her look happier. And I
Oh,
have that over my desk, and there's no way I could be at 18,600 feet. I get altitude sick on a ladder. So we're so different, but it's just wonderful to see how happy she can be trekking,
yeah.
in the Himalayas. It's really a terrific thing. So I read Into Thin Air, but not until she got back.
Yeah, right. You waited until she was home and safe.
Yeah, I did.
That's great. Well, is there anything else you want people to know about these conversations, or about how to get started, when to get started? What feels like, you don't want to leave people without letting them know?
Well, I think one date that is so important is about fun and adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've been analyzing the data we have on 40,000 couples
Wow.
recently, and just writing a research paper on it. And it turns out these are 40,000 couples about to begin couples therapy, and all over the world. And
They're about to start
there's
therapy?
one, they're just about to start therapy.
Okay.
And they've taken our relationship checkup that we have,
Yeah.
and it takes about 2 hours to take all these questionnaires. And over 80% of them say they no longer had fun together.
Wow.
Fun has gone to die
Wow.
in a committed relationship, and that is so sad.
Yeah.
Because there's just no need for that. You really can think about, what is it that maintains fun for the two of us,
Yeah.
and keep it alive. And the same thing for adventure. Keep adventure alive, and think about, what's your bucket list. What do you want to experience? Where do you want to travel? What experiences do you want to have in your life that are really just joyful and playful, and not so serious, not focus so much on career or worrying about your kids, but really just having a great time. And there's no reason to have that stop in a relationship. So that's an important date.
Thank you. I feel grateful for that one in particular, because as I was reading the book and as I was reading that date, I've been thinking recently, I want more fun. I want more adventure in my life. And then I was second guessing myself and thinking, oh, it's not as important as all these other things. But when I read the book, I thought, it validated my desire for that in my life recently. So thank you.
You're absolutely right. I think you've got to include that as your life. Fun and adventure and play are really important.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Any last personal piece that you feel like you really want couples or people to know who are trying to create lasting love?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to have the motto that when your partner is upset, the world stops and you listen.
And really make that important and really hear what they're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one, because I could see where, like you said, there's the oh shit, or oh no, or this is not, I think you said, this is not how I wanted to spend my evening. Right.
Right.
And yet if we don't spend some of the evenings that way, then we don't actually get to build that intimacy.
Yeah. And, and it's like having a stone in your shoe when you're hiking. You got to take it out. And if you have that stone there, between the two of you, and you don't take it out and talk about it, then it's going to just create distance. And that's really not good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, not only for this conversation, but for your 47 years of, painstaking research and the detail with which you're helping show us, what's important and what we need to do and how to actually make love last.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here today.
Oh, appreciate being invited. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.